Morning, everybody. I'm Councillor Glenn Bluff, Chair of today's hearing, and I would like to welcome you all to today's meeting of the Audit Hearings Subcommittee. This is not a public meeting, but a meeting the public can attend. Before we commence, I would like to outline the domestic arrangements for this meeting. We are not expecting a fire practice today. If the alarm sounds, please leave the building by way of the fire exit through the doors at the rear of the chamber. When you have left the chamber, proceed down the stairwell and exit through the emergency exit on the ground floor, somewhere over there. If there's anybody with mobility issues, please wait in the refuge area at the top of the stairs and where the emergency evacuation lift is located, and use the intercom situated on the left-hand side of the lift doors and call for assistance. The designated assembly point is in the public square in front of CAST, just over there, behind the fountain. I'd like to inform members of the public and press that today's meeting will be audio-visually recorded. By entering the council chamber, you accept that you will be recorded and your images retained and broadcast by the council on its website and on YouTube. If anyone intends to record or film any part of today's meeting, please ensure that this does not disturb the conduct of the meeting and you only focus on recording those people participating. Please ensure that your mobile phone is switched off or on silent mode. May I remind anyone speaking in the meeting that you will need to press the very large red button on the right hand side underneath the microphone and ensure the red light is illuminated. This will ensure you are recorded. Then please press the button again to turn it off, something I keep forgetting to do. Thank you very much. I will now commence the meeting. Item number 1. Apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence? No? Okay. None received today. Okay. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, please? Excellent. Okay. Okay. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of January 2019. This is the last time the subcommittee sat, so members may have noticed that we are being asked to agree the minutes of the last meeting, which was actually held 6 years ago. While this may seem a little strange, it is nevertheless a formality that we are required to adhere to. However, I do know that Councillor Beach and our 2 independent members, David Howell and Monica Clark, were present at that meeting. So I'm really going to ask if you can search into your collective memories to confirm the accuracy of those meetings that you've read. Can the meeting minutes be moved as a true and accurate record?
I'll move it, Chair.
And can that be seconded? Thank you very much. Agreed. Okay, on to item 4, the exclusion of public press. It is intended that for the most part of today's hearing, it will be held in public. However, the subcommittee will need to deliberate in private towards the end of the meeting. Having heard all the evidence and any representations from the parties who are present, at that point we will ask all parties, with the exception of the independent person, Phil Beavers, the monitoring officer and the governance officer, Scott and Jonathan, to leave the room and wait in the seated area outside the chamber, while the subcommittee considers the representations and evidence in consultation with the independent person. On to item 5, the consideration of the investigating officer's report regarding complaints about Councillor Michael Glynn of Hatfield Town Council. I see that Councillor Glynn has chosen not to be with us today, so we will move directly into asking the investigating officer, Neil Concannon, to present his report, including any documentary evidence or any material, and with the subcommittee's permission to carry any supporting witnesses if required. So, Neil, thank you very much for the report. Yeah, I do think it's very well constructed, but if you'd like to introduce it, please.
Thank you, Chair. As you've had the opportunity to read my report, if I may, I'll summarise what I believe to be the key points in this matter. So this matter relates to 2 separate complaints alleging that Hatfield Town Councillor Mick Glynn had breached the Hatfield Town Council Code of Conduct for Town Councillors. Following an initial consideration of the complaints by the monitoring officer and the independent person, I was asked to investigate each complaint in terms of whether Councillor Glynn had in fact breached the code by not treating certain people with respect. The Town Council are legally required to adopt a code of conduct to promote and maintain high standards by its elected members, and it adopted its current code of conduct in 2021. And insofar as it's relevant to this matter today, it states as follows: application of the code of conduct. This code of conduct applies to you as soon as you sign your declaration of acceptance of office of a councillor or attend your first meeting as a co-opted member, and continues to apply to you until you cease to be a councillor. This code of conduct applies to you when you are acting in your capacity as a councillor, which may include when your actions would give the impression to a reasonable member of the public with knowledge of all the facts that you are acting as a councillor. The code applies to all forms of communication and interaction, including all face-to-face meetings, in verbal communication and non-verbal communication. It goes on to say, paragraph 1, respect. As a councillor, 1.1, I treat other councillors and members of the public with respect. And 1.2, I treat local authority employees with respect and respect the role they play. If I can turn now to complaint 1, please. This complaint was made by a member of the public, a Mr. Philip Price. It's alleged that at a positive action group meeting held at Hatfield Woodhouse Village Hall on the 12th of August 2024, Councillor Glynn made disparaging remarks about the Hatfield Town Council clerk, Claire McCroy, referring to her specifically as useless and she's not very good. The meeting was chaired by a Doncaster Council public health officer. Also present at the meeting were 6 members of the public, at least one other Hatfield Town Council elected member, and a City of Doncaster Council ward councillor. Claire McCroy, the town clerk, was not present at the meeting. I met with Mr. Price, and subsequently he provided a witness statement which confirmed the details of his complaint. And that's at Annex E2 to my report, and his complaint form is at Annex E1. I subsequently met with Councillor Glynn on the 20th of January 2025 to seek his response to both complaints. At his request, draft minutes were produced, and they can be seen at Annex E6 to my report, and they were sent to him together with a draft witness statement. Regrettably, Councillor Glynn did not respond to my request to either confirm he was happy with the accuracy of the reports or indeed to provide a witness statement. I sent a further message to Councillor Glynn on the 12th of February and again on the 18th of February, giving him a final opportunity to respond to me by the 21st of February. Again, no response was forthcoming, and I am content that the draft minutes accurately reflect my meeting with Councillor Glynn and the responses he gave me. For both complaints, I believe there are 3 key points to decide. Firstly, was Councillor Glynn acting in his capacity as a Hatfield Town Councillor at the operative time? In a recent email to the monitoring officer dated the 10th of March, Councillor Glynn now suggests that he attended the PAG meeting as a member of the public and not as a councillor, purely to research how well Doncaster conducted such meetings. This is the first time he's made this claim, and so it doesn't feature in my report. This is despite the fact that I afforded him 3 opportunities to comment on the draft minutes of our meeting, and indeed a further opportunity on my draft report. Mr. Price explains, both in his complaint form and in his statement, that Councillor Glynn introduced himself at the meeting as Councillor Glynn from Hatfield Town Council. And during my meeting with Councillor Glynn, he readily accepted he introduced himself as such, as Councillor Glynn of Hatfield Town Council. On that basis, I concluded that at the operative time of this complaint, he was acting as a Hatfield Town Councillor at the time, or his actions would give the impression to a reasonable member of the public with knowledge of all the facts that he was acting as a councillor, and therefore subject to the provisions of the code. Looking objectively at the circumstances, Councillor Glynn's recent claim does not alter my view on this point. Secondly, was the person who was alleged not to have been treated with respect protected by the code? In this complaint, the person in question was the town clerk, at the time an employee of the town council, and as such she's clearly covered by paragraph 1.2 of the code. And finally, was Councillor Glynn's conduct a breach of the code? During our meeting, Councillor Glynn told me he could not recall the exact words he'd used, but accepted he may well have used the words ascribed to him by Mr. Price, i.e. that the town clerk was useless and not very good. He sought to justify the use of those terms. He said he believed in speaking his mind and that it was a flippant comment, was not said nastily or maliciously, and reflected his frustration about the delay in progressing a matter relating to a bench and a notice board, and which he clearly perceived as the town clerk's fault. You'll see from my report excuse me, that as the Town Council adopted the Local Government Association Model Code of Conduct, I've sought to draw on their associated guidance on this issue, and you'll see there are some quotes from that guidance at paragraph 4.21 of my report. Taking into account the evidence of Mr. Price, Councillor Glynn and the guidance, I've concluded that Councillor Glynn did in fact breach paragraph 1.2 of the code by his comments about the town clerk. This is because, looking at all the circumstances, even if I take on face value the explanation given by Councillor Glynn, I believe that his remarks were unreasonable, unnecessary, and the words used were disrespectful to the town clerk. The comments were made in a public meeting with members of the public and others present, and the town clerk was not present to respond. The comments focused on, to quote the guidance, personalities and personal attributes, and the words used were disrespectful in nature. In my view, despite Councillor Glynn's explanation for his comments, they amounted to an attempt to shame or humiliate others in public and fault-finding, because it does not appear they served any other purpose. If Councillor Glynn felt the need to make a comment at the meeting, he could have simply undertook to raise the issue with the Town Council. I note that Councillor Glynn states he had previously raised the issue directly with the Town Clerk. However, if he genuinely believed the town clerk was at fault in some way and was not taking on board his previous representations to her, he could have raised the issue through proper channels directly with the town council to deal with the conduct of officers. And in that regard, I note from the town council website that it has, as you would expect, a published disciplinary policy for unsatisfactory staff performance. Councillor Glynn could have raised the issue with the chair of the town council and asked that an investigation be commenced if he was so concerned about the performance of the town clerk. Even if Councillor Glynn was genuinely frustrated with the situation and the perceived inaction by the town clerk, I do not believe this can be an excuse for the comments he made during the meeting. In making that finding, I have been very mindful to balance the requirement to treat others with respect against Councillor Glynn's right to freedom of expression under Article 10 of the European Convention of Human Rights, namely to hold his own views and express them freely. However, I note that is a qualified right that must be balanced against the interests of wider society. Again, there are some relevant quotes from the LGA guidance in my report at paragraph 4.22. And for the reasons given, as mentioned, I've concluded that in making my finding, his Article 10 rights are not violated. I now move to complaint 2, and this was a complaint made by Hatfield Town Council councillor Deborah Smith. It's alleged that during a meeting of Hatfield Town Council held at its offices on the 14th of October, Councillor Glynn made a misogynistic remark to Councillor Smith and other female town councillors and the town clerk who were also present at the meeting. Specifically, Councillor Smith refers to Councillor Glynn referring to her and other female councillors and the town clerk during a debate as "use women." You'll be aware from my report that an audio recording of the meeting was taken, and I understand that you'll listen to an excerpt of that shortly. And you'll be able to draw your own conclusions, of course, from listening to that. I should say at this point, having listened to the recording and having spoken to Councillor Glynn, it transpires that Councillor Smith had misheard Councillor Glynn, and he actually said loose women. As a result of this, I contacted Councillor Smith by email to seek her views on this. Councillor Smith confirmed she thought the words used women were the words spoken by Councillor Glynn and took it to be a negative, dismissive and derogatory comment about the female councillors and staff present at the meeting. She made the point that neither comment cast a positive light on the way that Councillor Glynn spoke about women present at the meeting. In terms of the audio recording, at agenda item 10.2, a discussion ensues about an open day at the local cemetery and the maintenance of the cemetery. The debate becomes heated and it's clear that there is tension and disagreement in the meeting between, on the one side, Councillor Smith, who's chairing the meeting, other female councillors and the town clerk, and on the other side, Councillor Glynn and Councillor Broadhurst. Councillors Glynn and Broadhurst are criticised by some other female councillors present for directing members of the public who wish to raise concerns to the town council to other councillors during the open day held at local cemetery. The debate becomes more fractious with multiple people talking over each other at points. Councillor Glynn can be heard to say, "We're the only ones who can't get a word in. Talk about loose women." Councillor Smith challenges Councillor Glynn about his comment and states that that is misogynistic, to which Councillor Glynn replies, "I thought it was a programme on the telly." At that point, it's suggested to Councillor Glynn by a female present, who I believe is the town clerk, that his comments are a breach of the code of conduct. Councillor Glynn replies, "Well, get me reported, let's sort this out." Councillor Smith then asks for the minutes to record that she will report Councillor Glynn for his comment. In reply, Councillor Glynn scoffs and says, I don't even know what it means. The meeting then continues. In considering this complaint, I again turn to the three key questions. Firstly, was Councillor Glynn acting in his capacity as a Hatfield Town Councillor at the operative time? They were made during a Hatfield Town Council meeting, and therefore I don't think there can be any doubt that he was acting in his capacity as a councillor at that particular time. Secondly, was the person who was alleged not to have been treated with respect protected by the code? Again, this was the other female town councillors and the town clerk. Again, I don't think there can be any doubt that they are covered by paragraphs 1.1 and 1.2 of the code. And finally, 3, was Councillor Glynn's conduct a breach of the code? During my meeting with Councillor Glynn, I played him the audio recording and asked for his comments. He stated he was referring to the television programme Loose Women, from which he had observed a number of women talking loudly over the top of each other. I believe he was attempting to draw a comparison on what he'd seen on that programme and the events of the town council meeting. He commented that he believed the chair had lost control of the meeting and people were talking over the top of each other, not listening, and he was not able to get his point across. He told me that he'd nothing against women, it was not said to cause offence. I asked him if on reflection he thought the comment was appropriate, and in hindsight if he could see it could be offensive. Councillor Glynn said he had no problem with the comment and repeated that it was not said to cause offence. He suggested he was offended by some of the other members present at the meeting criticising him because of the events at the open day mentioned above. Again, I've drawn on the Local Government Association guidance for assistance on this, and there are again some relevant quotes at paragraph 4.37 of my report. Taking that into account, I note the comments made by Councillor Glynn were during a formal Town Council meeting, which was open to the public. The behaviour was therefore observed by other councillors, staff and any members of the public present. Respect needs to be shown at all times in these circumstances, not least to permit open democratic debate and the efficient conduct of council business. Councillor Glynn stated that he felt some other councillors and the clerk present at the meeting were interjecting and talking over each other and he could not get his point across. It does seem from the audio recording that there is some truth in those comments. However, I do not believe that can be an excuse to be anything less than respectful at all times. What also seems clear from the audio recording is that it's not only Councillor Smith but other female councillors and the town clerk were extremely offended by Councillor Glynn's loose women comment. There's an audible gasp followed by an immediate challenge to him over his comments. It's even specifically pointed out to him by one person present that his comments amounted to a breach of the code of conduct. Looking at the matter objectively, I consider the use of the term loose women, whether intended to cause offence or not, was an unnecessary use of inappropriate language, sarcasm and rude. If Councillor Glynn genuinely did not realise he'd caused offence before, I cannot see how he did not realise that from the reaction to the comments. At that point, he had the opportunity to draw back and apologise. However, instead it seems he aggravated the situation further by inviting other female councillors and the town clerk to report him. I've considered whether Councillor Smith's apparent mishearing of the words used by Councillor Glynn has any bearing on the issue. On the balance of probabilities, I've concluded that they do not. Councillor Smith makes the point that whether the phrase used was use women or loose women, neither cast a positive light on the women present at the meeting. I would agree with that observation. As with complaint 1, I have again balanced the requirement to treat others with respect against Councillor Glynn's right to freedom of expression, namely to hold his own views and express them freely. In my view, Councillor Glynn could have exercised his right of freedom of expression by simply continuing to take part in the debate at the meeting and asking to be heard without making disrespectful remarks. As the guidance recognises, there will be occasions during debates at council meetings where councillors are expected to express, challenge, criticise and disagree with views and ideas. However, this must be done in a respectful way. Therefore, I've concluded that in making my finding, his Article 10 rights are not violated. In line with the Council's procedure for dealing with complaints, I submitted my draft investigation report to the two complainants and to Councillor Glynn on the 21st of February to give them the opportunity to identify any parts that they disagreed with or required further consideration. Mr Price and Councillor Smith responded to me to confirm they had nothing to add. Again, regrettably, Councillor Glynn did not respond to me. At the time of writing to Councillor Glynn, I also asked him if he was prepared to offer an apology to the Town Clerk and Councillor Smith as a way of informally concluding these complaints. Again, regrettably, Councillor Glynn did not respond to me on that point. Chair, that's all I intend to say in terms of my investigation and the report. I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thanks very much. Do any member of the panel have any questions for Neil at all? Thanks very much, Neil, for presenting. I do have one question, because I'm sure it's a question that anybody reading this report may have thought of as well, especially the general public who may have picked this up in the press as it was reported last week. In complaint 2, obviously you get the impression that Councillor Glynn is frustrated with the way in which the meeting is being organised and being chaired. Are you saying that the reason it was perhaps disrespectful and rude because the simile he was using was about a TV programme which has the word women in the title, being loose women, and had he made a simile to something else saying, oh, it's like a tap room in here or something like that, would that have, are we simply focused on the point that the title of the programme has the word women in it? If the programme, if Loose Women had been called something else, called Friends Gathering, and he'd made that judgment saying, oh, it's like Friends Gathering here, would that have been disrespectful?
I think that the remark in and of itself was unnecessary and unreasonable and disrespectful in itself, but I think the connotations to women, I think, certainly took it over the line. I think that's what I would say.
Okay, thank you very much. I understand at this point we would normally ask Councillor Glynn to give his reply and to present his own case, but unfortunately Councillor Glynn's chosen not to be with us today, so we will need to continue. So, just confirming, Jonathan, do we now go straight into summing up?
Chair, if members of the panel don't have any more questions to the investigating officer, then it's his opportunity just to sum up. Basically, we move to the summing up. Okay.
Thank you very much. So if you could just do us a summation, please, Neil.
I think I've outlined everything I need to say, Chair. I think if Councillor Glynn had been here and had responded, I may well have taken the opportunity to sum up, but I don't feel that's necessary in the circumstances.
Thank you very much. In that case, we'll now move to the decision. As we've now heard from Neil, and unfortunately the comments from Councillor Glynn by way of your report, and we've also read the evidence and your report, we'll now go into a private session to deliberate, and all relevant parties will be asked to leave the room. Once we've reached our decision, you will all be invited back into the meeting for the subcommittee to present their decision. If you are unable to remain, please indicate now. Thank you. Thanks very much. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for your patience while we deliberated and made our decision. I will now read out the decision of this subcommittee. Having regard to the report and findings of the investigation conducted by Neil Concannon, Head of Litigation and Regulatory and Deputy Monitoring Officer, City of Doncaster Council. In relation to the two complaints before today's hearing, the subcommittee have accepted the investigating officer's findings that there has been a failure by Councillor Glynn to comply with paragraphs 1.1 and 1.2 of the Code of Conduct. And furthermore, we have added he has failed to comply with 8.2 in terms of him giving further cooperations to the investigation and also not attending today. This is against the Code of Conduct as adopted by Hatfield Town Council, and in respect of these allegations for the reasons identified in the investigating officer's report. Councillor Mick Glynn shows an assertive and engaged manner as a member of Hatfield Town Council with a strong inclination to challenge both staff and colleagues. Healthy challenge and robust debate are fundamental to our political system. Town and parish councillors are not professional politicians, and their meeting environment should be collaborative and not combative. While we do not want councillors to feel that they cannot express their honest views and be challenging, such behaviour must be tempered with respect for individuals, as required by Hatfield Town Council's Code of Conduct, which he agreed upon in June 2021. In the circumstances of this case, we have therefore agreed that the appropriate sanctions be imposed upon Councillor Glynn to be as follows: that Councillor Glynn be censured and reprimanded for his actions, that Councillor Glynn provides a written apology to the former clerk and to Councillor Deborah Smith and the Town Council as a whole, copied to the monitoring officer, that the subcommittee's findings in respect of Councillor Glynn's conduct be published on the City of Doncaster Council's website, and to recommend Hatfield Town Council that the subcommittee's findings be published on its website, that the subcommittee's findings be reported to Hatfield Town Council for consideration, and to recommend to Hatfield Town Council that Councillor Glynn undertake training at the expense of Hatfield Town Council on the Member Code of Conduct and on proper conduct at meetings. Formal notification of today's decision, including reasons, will be communicated to all parties within 7 working days. I would like to thank everybody for their attendance and their input in today's meeting, and I will now declare the hearing closed. Thank you.